Welcome to Recovery His Way. I'm Tom Reynolds, your host, and we're here today on the campus of His Way with a very dear friend of mine, Keith Hodges. I've met Keith a while back. He came out and just wanted to learn more about us, and we got to kind of know each other, found out we had a lot of back history of various things that we knew in common, that kind of thing. And so Keith's been a part of this for, a couple years or so now?
Getting close to 2 years, yeah.
Okay, it's great. I appreciate all that you've done. It's been great to have you as a part of our ministry here. I appreciate you coming out and volunteering and really spending time with the guys and all that you've done to embrace this program. So, as we talk to those listening today, I'm really thinking more about people wanting to get involved in some way, getting involved in recovery and that kind of thing, which can be a daunting task for people who don't feel like they're trained or professional or experienced. And yet you've chosen to do that. And I'm interested in kind of why and that type of thing, but maybe first just kind of start with a little bit of your background, kind of your history and kind of where you come from and what kind of brings you to this.
All right. I was born and raised about 250 miles from here at Paducah, Kentucky. Grew up as a country boy, and among other things that I got to experience, I started playing basketball because I was unusually tall. And they recruited me. They almost made me be a basketball player.
Well, you were in Kentucky.
I was in Kentucky. And so the end result of that was that after high school basketball, I got an invitation to go and get a scholarship at a small Christian school in Lubbock, Texas. I went out there. I had I guess what you'd call a nominal or an average Christian faith, and tried to be a good kid, but didn't really know a whole lot about the Bible. And out there, that all changed. I began to learn a whole lot of things that I hadn't previously learned, and eventually made a much more serious commitment to the Lord. And that also eventually led, a couple of years after college, I went on a mission trip to Switzerland. And while on that mission trip, which I thoroughly enjoyed and pretty much changed my life, I met a young woman named Francie from Oklahoma. I would have had no other way to meet her except on that mission trip. We tell each other we tell other people we met in Paris, which sounds very romantic, doesn't it? But we got attracted and interested in each other, and about a year later got married. We will soon be having our 50th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. That's
we
awesome.
have 2 children, 4 grandchildren. Ministry, I for a long time after getting real serious about my faith, people kept saying, you ought to be a preacher. And I said, no, that really wasn't a possibility. But finally, I did decide to move in that direction. And for most of those 50 years, I've been either directly or indirectly in ministry.
Okay.
We moved here to Huntsville 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I started working part-time with a little church, preaching for them and doing some other things. And there was a man at church who said, are you familiar with His Way? And I said, that sounds familiar. And what I didn't realize, I only live about 3 miles from here. And so I drove past this dozens and dozens of times. Okay. And so it sort of registered me on as there's something that sounds religious, but I really didn't know what it was. And so he suggested I'd call, and I called and talked with you. And then, like you said, I came and visited the campus, and you invited me to teach a couple of those morning Bible studies, which I guess were like tryouts. I must have passed because before too long, you asked me to start teaching this Tuesday night class, which I've been doing ever since. We're in there for almost an hour, and I'll tell you about the Tuesday night class if you want me to, but that's how I got here. And
one of the things that's interesting to me, obviously you're kind of in the age of retiring. I'm not sure how old you are, but you're kind of retiring. A lot of people at this point in their life, they're looking to move to the beach. They're looking to spend all their time with their grandkids. They're looking to do these other things. And yet here you are choosing to engage yourself in what can be a very demanding kind of environment, with people who are struggling with addiction, and not something maybe that you've had a lot of experience with up until this point. So I'm curious about why now, why that choice, why that direction?
Well, I supposedly retired 4 years ago. I'm 70.
Okay.
And we moved here because our daughter and her family lived here, and so this was where we chose to retire. Interesting thing about being retired, I have to now tell people I'm semi-retired, because to tell you the truth, I'm having just as much ministry and just as much fun and challenge and thrill and all that in ministry as I ever had. I just don't go to the office every day, and that's pretty pleasant. And
sounds
so
like
I'm
the ideal situation.
Well, yeah,
sounds like the ideal.
So I'm getting to do a lot of things, but one of the foremost is obviously this weekly work here, and sometimes more often than that at His Way. So I love it, and I love staying active, and so this is a good thing for me to be doing.
What do you love about it? Obviously, you came here and we talked, and then we, kind of you got involved in some various ways. But I know that just watching you, I know you've really been willing to go above and beyond. I mean, there's a number of guys that you built a strong personal relationship with and have spent a lot of time with outside of his way and classrooms and that kind of stuff, and had, spent a lot of special time with and devoted a lot of time to. What is compelling to you about this?
Well, I never had direct experience with an addiction program like this, although I did teach. I've been pretty active in jail ministry throughout my whole preaching time, and I'm sure a lot of those folks that I ministered to, and I taught classes both just to women and just to men, never mixed, and but I'm sure a lot of those people had addiction issues, and that just didn't come out. So I've always had, I don't want this to sound braggadocious, but I've always sort of had a sensitive spot for people who just had a rough time in their life and were looking for something better. And I think that's what we have to offer as Christians and about the gospel. And so when I came into the program, I told you and I told the guys, especially early on, I know very little about the issues of addiction, but it's interesting. Every week I teach them some from the Bible, and every week they teach me something about how addiction works and what it is. And so it's been a good learning process for me. And I do enjoy getting to know them. Now, I know you're transitioning from a 6-month program. For many, we'll have a 9-month program. But at the most, usually I get these guys after the first month. If they want to, they can come into my class. And so I have them for 5 months, and some of them come and go even faster than that. But there have been a few, several, who I've gotten to so close to that after they leave, we stay in touch. They get involved in getting my materials I put online. I have dinner with them. I don't know if you know this, I performed a wedding for one of these guys a few months after he left here. During class, he would always talk about his fiance and how he's eager to get out and go on. And so we stayed in touch, and I did their wedding one beautiful Saturday over by the Big Spring downtown. And so, and there's others like that. And so I have meals with them, and not with all of them, but with some of them, and that's really a good thing too. So I enjoy all of that,
and I appreciate that. I mean, it's easy to kind of do the classroom 1 hour thing. It's a whole nother thing to really start loving these guys, caring for them, and let that expand and really become a part of your life. I really appreciate you doing that. One of the things too, I think a lot of times people have expectations about what this would be like. I don't know what kind of expectations you had coming in, but I'm interested in kind of what your expectations were and how your experiences have measured to those expectations.
Well, I tried not to have any set expectations. I just been in enough different ministry situations that that hardly ever works.
Right.
But I did think that these folks, and this has proven true, this is probably, in one sense, about as captive audience as you can have, in interest-wise, not only just the physical part, but unlike even sometimes church situations, these guys know why they're here. They know what the problem is, and they're looking for help. And that, to me, that's a wide open invitation to share with them not only your personal interests, but obviously to share the truth of the Bible.
Right.
Can I tell you one thing about the class that sort of occurred to me after the fact? I come in for an hour, and we've studied through the Gospel of John. We did some in Hebrews. Now we're in Ephesians. And so my objective is not just to say, here's what the teaching, the doctrine, whatever this book is. It occurred to me, hopefully I'm teaching these guys how to learn to read the Bible and understand it for themselves. I think that is vital. I think that's one of the things that religion has kind of missed, is a lot of people, and I believe the devil's behind this, says, oh, you can't understand the Bible. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to Christian college. Certainly didn't go to seminary or anything. No, I think what these guys hopefully learn in this class, and this kind of comes out every Tuesday now, they say, well, I never saw that before, but there it is, and now I can see it. Now I know what to look for. Right. And so it's pretty exciting if you can teach them not only what the Bible says, but how to study the Bible for themselves, especially after they leave here. So
that's tremendous, because obviously, ultimately, an individual learning how to read it for themselves and apply it for themselves is the most important thing. And one of the things you mentioned earlier, I think so many times we experience in church is we end up kind of preaching to the same people a lot, and it becomes kind of an intellectual exercise or a ritualistic exercise of some kind, versus these guys are really here for some kind of life change, some kind of application, some kind of my life needs to look different because of this. And I think that can definitely be a meaningful experience.
And the reason I laughed is I just thought of something. It's one of the things that makes it very interesting. It's an all guys class. And these guys, they're wide open, and I try to be wide open, and we we have a more of a comfort zone to talk about, and I don't mean get down in what I say, waller in the dirt, but we can talk about sexual things, we can talk about lust, we can talk about pride, we can talk about the competitive thing that men tend to have, and we really have some pretty wide open, freewheeling discussions, as well as studying the scriptures. And every now and then, not all the time, but somebody will challenge me and they say, I'll tell them something that I think is really based on the scriptures. Say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I said, well, let's talk about that. And sometimes they're even in class, they'll say, oh, now I see what you're saying. Right. To me, that's thrilling. That's where ministry really gets very real, very very dynamic, I think.
Right, so. Absolutely. Well, a lot of times we get into these situations because we want to help people. We have a passion. You've obviously been in ministry, and so this is an extension of that and continuing to do ministry. But so many times we get involved in things, and God uses it ultimately to minister to us, to change us, to impact us. Yeah. And I was just interested in kind of what are some things that maybe you've learned from the Lord through this experience, or how is Keith Hodges better because he's been involved here?
Well, I'm going to back up and predate anything to do with his way, but this has been just a magnification of it. I've, over the years, learned a whole lot about grace. I'm so thankful that I had good teachers and good mentors that pointed me in that direction. And I started trying, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, saying, approach every person with grace, and if they're worse off than you are in some way, then don't look down on them, don't despise them or anything. Try to see them, try to see yourself in them and the help that you needed and now they need. And so I kind of had a little bit of a running start on that, but being here with these guys, they're just as human as anybody else, and they don't need to be stomped on. They don't need to be pushed into a corner and scolded. They just need somebody to say, hey, in effect, and this doesn't all come out in one neat sentence. Usually it's over a period of time. God loves you so much, and he doesn't want any of us to live like these things that you read about here. He wants us to live like this, and let's give that a try. So It's kind of a great, for me, and that's only expanded. Several times I've gone home from these classes on Tuesday night and told my wife, guess what I learned tonight from the Bible? And she's sort of surprised because I've been studying the Bible pretty seriously for 50 years or so. But something in class and having to teach it opened it up for me for at a new level. And I appreciate that.
Right. I know one of the things you've done too is not only did you learn about his way through members of your church, but you've obviously encouraged folks in your church to be involved in various ways. I know one of the things you guys were very generous about was during this COVID shutdown and the impact it had on the food banks and that kind of stuff in this area. And we rely a lot on food bank to help support our food. You guys put together a contribution. A number of your members gave very generously to help us with our food budget during that time, which was tremendous. But I was just interested in, as you encourage Christians, your own members, and engage with other Christians on this, and encourage them to get involved out here. What are some of the things that you would say to them? What are the things that kind of your move to encourage Christians to consider getting involved in this? Is there anything particular that kind of drives that as you share it with your church?
Well, I think first of all, when you just say what it is, what the objectives here are for caring, good-hearted, God-oriented people, that touches a good nerve. That sort of opens up a sensitivity. And then if they say, well, how did you get involved? I tell them my story. But then they say, well, what could you do? I said, almost anything you can do, they can use out there. And I hope I don't flood you with. But I say, now, not everybody's going to come in and teach a Bible class. Maybe more could, but they need help sometimes cooking the meals, bringing the food, yard work, just being around these guys when they're having their play days, like when they have a sports day or whatever. And so I tell them, main thing you need to do is what I do. Call Tom Reynolds and go out there and get a tour of the campus. I said, it'll be a little different. It's not like going on a college campus, but it's not like going to a nursing home either. It's a residency place, and you'll sort of get the feel of what's going on. And probably if you were to say to Tom or some of the others, staff out there, I really like to do this, they can probably plug you in.
Right.
So
that's one of the great things is, as you were mentioning, I mean, every one of these guys here is simply a person, right? That have the same needs, the same struggles that every other person has. And anyone volunteering, basically, they're going to be able to identify with these guys because we have common shared experience, common shared struggles. And so whatever their gifts are and talents are, those are things at some level that guys in this program need. They're not uniquely things that just are unique to addicts. The human experience and the human need.
Let me tell you something else I thought of. Through this devotional ministry that I conduct, I have a lot of people who I've never met that become friends. And there's a lady in Florida in her 50s, I think, and she's become a reader and a follower. She has her own personal struggle or story. Her daughter was always, from being a teenager on, was involved in drugs and overdosed at age 32. And so she's got a very sensitive spot. Somehow in conversation with her, either privately or on one of my devotionals, I said something about working at this recovery center. She's very interested. So long story short, she has now, with these guys that come through, and I have them for most of those 5 months, and it's going to be an ongoing relationship. She provides at her expense the recovery Bible. And there's a study guide that goes with it. She sends me those all the time, 3 at a time, and I just give them out to guys selectively. And then sometimes they get to corresponding with her. They'll get her email address. And she's also a knitter. So she's knitted me and Jeremy and Jacob. Those names will mean something to you. All Afghans that we use to sit around and watch TV. And so it's things like that if you can't be here physically and be involved, there's unlimited financial needs from just making a contribution to buying Bibles for these guys or whatever it is.
Or making an Afghan.
Or making an Afghan, right, exactly.
That sounds great. Well, I appreciate one of you have a unique perspective as a preacher in a church as well. And obviously, this has been kind of your semi-retirement church kind of experience, but obviously you've been in full-time ministry in a lot of different places around the country. And I was thinking about, preachers who are in their local congregations who are maybe running into addiction problems within their community or church and not sure what to do. What kind of words would you have or encouragement would you have for those preachers?
The first thing I would tell them to do, among several things, is try to get off. If you preach on Sunday nights, try to get off and come to one of the graduations. You'll get a quicker, bigger view of what the purpose of this program is by watching one of the graduations once a month. And if that kind of whets your appetite, then man, you can go from there. And the other thing is just come out and volunteer, be on call to teach a class on short notice or something. And again, there are now, thankfully, a lot of resources available online at public libraries and everything else about helping your members with addiction. That's all good, and I'm trying to do that too, but there's nothing like being in a place where you're sitting in a room with 12, 15 guys who've struggled with this, and sometimes they're very open about their struggle, and you just learn. You just pick it up. So,
well, I appreciate so much what you're doing, Keith, and I know the guys love your class, but far more than that, they love the fact that you love them. And that makes a huge difference and huge impact. I know you're always at the graduations on the first Sunday of the month. We have one coming up this Sunday.
I come for the ice cream and cake as well.
Okay.
No, I love being there. It's a great thing.
And I know that they know that you care about them, and I do appreciate you taking a few under your wing over time and spending time and really devoting yourself. I know you've had times of great joy in that, and also weddings and sometimes great heartache and disappointment that we've talked about. And that's all a part of the journey of loving people. It involves both great rewards as well as some challenging risks at times.
Sure does.
So I appreciate you joining us in that journey, and I appreciate you listening today. And if you want to know more about His Way, you can check out our website at hiswayinc.org.